Welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast. It's Jeremy Werner and Joey Wagner. Joey, when was the last time you were on the podcast? It's been a while.
I was just about to say it's been almost a month. I'm like, dang, the new kid, Kyle's in here just taking all the reps on the podcast. I didn't even remember I had to find my mic, figure out how to do this. It's been a little bit, man.
Yeah, good to see you. We got a lot of things to chat about. I've given some thoughts on the transfers as they've come through here. You've been so busy on the road, like taking over for me these last couple of weeks, which I totally appreciate. You really stepped up with me going through everything I've gone through. But we got to chat some ball, man, because Illinois has added a lot of transfers. They've lost a lot of transfers. You have a huge senior class leaving out the door. And we'll hit on what they still need to add. I see the mentions. I know why you guys are fretting about the defensive line, and we will get into it. But huge news, Joey, as Bielema's strong run of retention with the Stars continues. 2 weeks ago, it was Matthew Bailey announcing his return, and now Xavier Scott announces he's back on Thursday evening. We're kind of waiting on this NFL draft news. You get this list of players, and Xavier Scott's not on either of them. I really don't know the difference between the guys who have graduated, guys who are underclassmen who are approved by the NFL. I don't know, but Xavier Scott wasn't on it. So you and I were trying to dig throughout the day of what it means. And then we get the graphic from Xavier that he is back. What was your reaction, Joey?
As they got closer to that deadline, you're like, the win horse, right? Like, why hasn't he announced anything yet? And then you did zoom out a little bit in that moment or in those moments and think, is this really the opportune time to make that leap coming off of a season-ending injury? I think the way he progressed, he may have had a runway in the pre-draft process to go through something and show his skills, but you kind of factored all those things in. It's like, this feels like it could be trending in a way for him to come back. We just couldn't get anyone who really knew. Like, I don't really know when the actual decision was made, but I didn't get the sense this was a decision made 2 weeks ago and announced today or even late last week. I don't know, but I think this was all a pretty tight window in terms of deciding, announcing, and moving forward.
Yeah, I'll let you continue, Joey, but like the thing I knew is that people in the program earlier this week didn't have an answer, and that Bielema was going to have chats with him. So I think this was mostly Bret Bielema doing the chatting with Xavier Scott, and he did not offer to update us throughout the process because it's a pretty private process. Hard decision for Xavier. I think it made sense either way for him just to go to the NFL. He's got enough tape. He had enough tape last year, even before the injury, but you add the injury into the mix, would have probably been a day 3 pick, but he can make a lot of money coming back to Illinois and ramp it up. He will be 24 years old when he goes into the 2027 NFL draft, but is that a big difference from 23? I'm not sure.
That was probably some of the feedback, right? Is as you're figuring out this decision is how much do NFL teams, front offices weigh 23 versus 24? Because that felt like the biggest thing for me. But it's another, I guess, piece in Bret Bielema's retention of stars. And they've all come in a little bit different ways, right? Like, you get Xavier Scott back maybe twice because he was coming off of an injury, and the one last year in 2024, we didn't think a lot about it because he finished up what he needed to finish up at Illinois, but then he had some work done. Matthew Bailey obviously had some work done that he was very open about being a big factor in his return. So you don't want guys to miss time for the season, right? I mean, losing Xavier Scott did not help Illinois in any meaningful way. It hurt Illinois last year. But the other side of that is now you have a pitch to keep working and keep building in terms to getting him back to help better himself, to help better your program. And for a defense that we will get into it has lost quite a bit, to get him back, to get Matthew Bailey back, to get Juice Clark back in that secondary, that is huge. I mean, it's absolutely enormous for this Illinois defense. So I guess to answer your question 4 minutes later, like I wasn't shocked because just as you read the tea leaves, it's like this feels like it could be going in this direction, but there is still a little bit of a, oh, wow, they actually did it. Like this actually came together factor. I think that's more of what it was last night.
Yeah, just in our text between each other, it was kind of like, I think he's coming back just because like what day we're on, right? I mean, we're going all the way up to the deadline. It just felt like there was some doubt. And I just think if Xavier, this is a no doubt decision. Like you have to be all in on the NFL, feel great about your NFL draftables. And, nowadays being able to get paid money, this is the great part of revenue sharing is guys like this, guys like Gabe Akis this year can come back, make good money, professional level money. I mean, Xavier Scott can make more money at Illinois this year, or as much as he would make in the NFL. So come back, get a better platform to jump off into the NFL. Like, not going through the pre-draft process would be difficult. That's not going to help you. And that's a huge part of this process. So as good as the tape is, just having those question marks and having the ability to come back. I mean, if it weren't for revenue share, NIL, Xavier Scott would not have been back this year, let alone, this upcoming season. So I think that's a huge part. These guys stay in school longer, get educations, and, set themselves up maybe for a better NFL long-term. And it certainly helps the program when you get a guy back like Xavier Scott. And it feels like because he hasn't played in so long, this is an unbelievable college football player.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a big time Big Ten football player. And for all, he's had multiple surgeries here at Illinois. He played almost 800 snaps in both 2023 and 2024. So many interceptions, obviously game-changing plays. He won basically the Kansas game by himself, but I thought he was good the first 3 games he played this year. This is an all Big Ten caliber nickel/corner you're getting back. And you're getting an all Big Ten strong safety back and your number 1 cornerback. Secondary, this is the best secondary Aaron Henry has had going into a season. We'll talk about the other pieces here. But to have 3 players who I think, Joey, and I don't think it's much of a question, are your best NFL draft prospects on this team are all in the secondary. Now, maybe Khalil Valentine or somebody steps up and surprises us. But going into the season, I think Matthew Bailey, Xavier Scott, and Juice Clark are your best NFL prospects. And I think your secondary is going to be way better than it was this season. So Aaron Henry's had a few good months here, right? Like, they ended the season pretty well on defense. Like, I know the Wisconsin game, a couple drives were bad, but since that Washington game, they played pretty well. Only allowed 17 points a game, and the special teams didn't help them in some of that regard. Feels like Aaron Henry's back. I don't know if we can say that 100% certainty, but certainly feels that way. And now he's got 3 of his best players returning. So Aaron, you got to make the most of it now, but this has been a very positive few months for him.
Yeah, one more thing about Xavier, and I don't know if I'm the only one really interested in this. I really can't wait to talk to him. I want to know what he could have done in pre-draft. His surgery was back in September. Yeah. I think it was mid to late September, if I'm not mistaken. So he was starting to run. Bret Bielema had given periodic updates throughout the season, like always running on land now as opposed to being in the water and running however that looks. So that's what I was like, okay, maybe he could get a pro day in, some point late March or whatever the timeline is where he can put something together, because, the bowl game was always a quote unquote possibility. I don't ever fully believe it was at all, just in terms of it doesn't make sense. Is he healthy enough? All of those things. And it turned out it didn't end up happening. But yeah, I'm just really interested in that timeline, because Matthew Bailey had his surgery in November. Like, there was just no real window for him in that regard. So that's just kind of a weird little thing that I wonder how much that truly did factor into it, or if it's just, hey, this is an opportunity to put more tape together, and he believes his skills are better than not having tape for a senior season. But back on track a little bit, the strength of this defense is in the secondary right now, and it's very top heavy. Right, but I think you can also, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, next, see depth emerging as a possibility at some of those positions, corner in particular. You got Tanner Heckle. Where's he end up? What does all of this look like with some of the transfers they've brought in? But the secondary is as good as Aaron's had as defensive coordinator. We say that he was on staff in 2022. He was not the defensive coordinator in 2022. So we're not ignoring that great secondary, but in terms of his time,
the legendary 2022.
No, goodness, no, that was an anomaly. That secondary was an anomaly. Like, it is hard for a lot of programs to put a secondary like that was together. So no one's making those comparisons. I just had to put it out there in case someone's like, wait a minute. No, we know that was, yeah. But yeah, I really like what the potential of this could be. And now you don't put as much on, some of your younger guys. Nick Hankins can come along potentially at a speed that's more comfortable. And if that's an immediate spot in the 2 deep, great, right? Tanner Heckle, you can figure out where he fits. Deuce Fillmore, the Georgia State transfer. How does all of this work together? Jaquan Morris, where does he fit into all of this? I think a starting cornerback, in fact, is how I think he fits. But you can just kind of let things naturally happen, and that is a huge deal.
Just to kind of remind ourselves of Xavier Scott, last 2 seasons in 23 and 24, this is an all Big Ten guy, 106 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 17 passes defended, Joey, 6 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles. He's not Devin Witherspoon, but some of the things that make Spoon him is Xavier Scott kind of flash, right? Just the recognition skills, the instincts. He's really big into film and studying opponents' tendencies, and that shows up on game day. He's not the biggest, so he's going to give up some things, but he always bounces back from it. This is a guy who never lacks confidence, and at this position, you always got to have that confidence, and he can just break on the ball. He's got so much ball production, which this group lacked this season. And now you add this guy back into the mix of that, somebody who's going to knock the ball down, but also have the chance to get those interceptions. They need another game breaker, and they need leadership. I mean, Miles Scott, I think, really kind of got underrated the last 2 years because it felt like at times he was more solid than like big time playmaker until the Northwestern game where he was the star of the game along with Gabe Akis in that one. But you lose him. So to have Matthew Bailey and Xavier Scott still in the spine of that defense who have that leadership quality, Matt Krasetich returns. He's got some playing experience. He's a senior, but Miles is that voice. So to have Matt and Xavier both back, guys who are part of that 2022 secondary, if you go back that far, 2 of the best evals that Bret Bielema has made, I don't think that can go overlooked. And that's why I know we've talked about it over and over again. Retention isn't always the sexiest, right? But think of what Minnesota's going through, losing Coy Parrish, right? And with some like Duke now, Darian Mensah threatening, sounds like, to go to the transfer portal. To keep your best players like this, guys who've been part of the program that can carry the torch of the guys who came before them and keep this program kind of moving forward, but have the DNA that has made it successful. I don't think that can get overlooked either, Joey.
No, and retention hasn't been perfect this offseason. We will go into that, but when you're talking your top end guys, you don't like the stars. And I think Angelo McCollum is a really good football player. So I don't I'm not trying to in Tommy. I'm not trying to move goalposts here, but you're talking your all Big Ten guys, your first, second, third team, all Big Ten guys. You've not lost them to the portal. And that is a huge feather in Bret Bielema's cap, and it's helped his program. It's helped them win back-to-back seasons with 9 or more wins. It's helped kind of turn this thing in the direction that it's gone. So that is really enormous, and it's not always going to be perfect. You're seeing that every year the transfer portal offers a different kind of speed bump, hiccup, hurdle, however you want to put it, because it's changing, and I understand that. But to not lose your all Big Ten guys, that is just enormous.
Yeah, can we talk? I mean, Angelo McCollum and Tommy Waidere are basically starters, right? So you didn't lose that last year. Like Josh McCray was the biggest one, and he was part of the running back rotation, was a starter in 2024. So you were hit harder than you were in previous years. But think about who you have coming back: Scott, Bailey, Clark, Khalil Valentine, Aiden Lawfrey, Caden Fagan, Hudson Clement, Colin Dixon, Brandon Henderson. I include Joe Barna into that mix just because I do think he's ready to take a step forward. And there's other players that were, rotational players, guys who could take a step forward. But after losing all the seniors that you did, Joey, outside of the defensive line, and we'll get into that, like these are the guys you had to keep. Like, and the fact that I didn't think you were getting both Scott and Bailey back, and then to get all those other guys who you project as potential all Big Ten players as juniors, seniors, that's massive. And it speaks to what Illinois is putting in resource-wise to retention, and it puts in trust, right? Those guys trust that Bielema will get them to where they want to go. Because some of these guys leaving, you wonder, are they going to be starters at their next stop? Or is this going to be the best thing long-term for their NFL development? It seems like Bielema, with most of his players, has that trust that he'll get them there.
Yeah, and look, you could be upset with who you've lost. You could be upset with maybe you don't love everyone that they brought in the transfer portal. And I think there are fair questions at a few positions. It's just in terms of what we think this roster is going to look like. But the retention has been steady. And it's not the sheer volume of bringing back Luke Altmaier, Gabe Ackes, J.C. Davis, Melvin Priestley, Xavier Scott, Matthew Bailey last year, Dylan Rowe, all those guys. But you brought back a ton of starters for retention. And you can go around college football and look, and I bet there are more starters leaving than you're just so in the weeds and covering Illinois and being a fan of Illinois and seeing it like, whoa, you lose 2 starters on the defensive line, you lose rotational linebackers, whatever the case. Other teams have it worse in terms of what they're losing. And I think I just don't want that to go overlooked, because bringing back a Colin Dixon, bringing back a Hudson Clement, like that's a big deal for your offense and where you think it can go. And the 3 running backs, I mean, all over just various positions. I didn't get a sense that Xavier Scott or Matthew Bailey were going to come back in portal. Like, that was never anything that crossed my mind. So, to have that just be a sure thing, like it's NFL or it's Illinois, that's what makes your program grow, and that's what makes your program sustain. Now, we will get into it. You've got to fill out the other parts of your roster. At this point, we should get into it after this.
Well, yeah, we will.
Gone around it for a minute.
The only thing I want to hit on before we get to the defensive front is, let's talk about the secondary. Matthew Bailey is at boundary safety. He's all Big Ten player, going to be a draft pick next year, barring something catastrophic. Xavier Scott is going to be a draft pick. I'm keeping him at nickel, Joey. I know he can play corner. I think he's an unbelievable nickel. You keep him there. Juice Clark, your number 1 corner. I thought he turned into a star at the end of last year. Barely anything completed on him, I think, especially down the stretch. Made a bunch of plays on the ball. And his next step, I think, is more that ball production of interceptions. But, man, he knocks a lot of passes down. He's big on third down. So those are your 3 no-doubt starters. I think there's 2 kind of fun competitions for these other 2 spots. Your other outside corner spot, I think JUCO, number 1 JUCO corner, Jaquan Morris would be my front runner to win that job. You bring in Deuce Fillmore, who's got FBS starting experience from Georgia State. Not a ton of ball production from him, but bigger guy, physical. He's physical, not
versatile.
Yeah, but versatile, can play nickel, can play corner, just a guy with experience covering. And then you have some young guys who are really exciting. You mentioned Nick Hankins. I think can crack the 2 deep. I think he's going to have to fight redshirt freshman RJ Jones, the third for that. Tywan Cox, Elmarian Thomas, some fun guys. But I also am not giving up on Tanner Heckel. Like, this was a starter for you last year. And I think it is such a luxury that guy now is now fighting for a starting job. Like, I think I'd love to see him at corner, because I think he struggled tackling out in kind of the middle of the field, right? I thought he got better as the season went along, but that athleticism, that quickness, I still think can play. Like that Duke play showed his potential on that interception. I think on the outside, especially in that zone coverage, I think he can get better, because I saw him get better as the season went along. It was a rough first 7 or 8 games, but that guy is now depth for you, right? Or competition for you. That's a positive sign for me, Joey. Like, there's some talent at that corner and nickel spot.
Yeah, I've told you this. We've gone back and forth about this. I still wonder if Tanner Heckel is a free safety option. Obviously, you have to be that last defense, and you have to tackle in the open. Yeah, that's right. That's my hiccup. But that's kind of when he committed. If you remember, we thought playmaking, out in space, ball skills, like, he fits that mold. You trust him enough to tackle. But I just think that, like, we've sat here, we've mentioned all but the strong safety spot for him. So, like, there's just, you can see Illinois trying different things. You could imagine it, rather, trying different things with him in the spring to see where you go, because you don't need him to be your starting nickel right now. Xavier Scott covers that. So that's a huge luxury. And I'm with you. I don't give up on someone who goes in and sees some really great slot players and great quarterbacks. Yeah, I mean, he had a tough run of it, and obviously there's things to improve on, but I just think there's options that you could mix and match and see where he fits there. But yeah, you look at the secondary, I think it's free safety. That's what we want to see. Because you could pretty much, I'm with you, I think everyone else in the secondary, you kind of know how at least the ones are going to shake out. And then the twos, you can make a very educated guess in terms of how that looks. But free safety has been such a, Miles Scott has run that spot for 3 years, right? You go from him, go back to Kendall Smith, you go back to Kirby Joseph. That's not a position you've had to think a lot about. And now it's like, okay, who goes in and wins that job, and what do they want out of that? I think that is what I'm really, really interested in, because Miles Scott was that sure, last line of defense, get him, bring him down. But you've also seen a lot of playmaking at that position at other points in time in the Bielema era. So which way do they go? Can you thread the needle to find both, if at all possible? Or do you just like to have tackle him, get him down, keep it in front, live to see another day? I don't know, but I think in the guys they put back there, you'll be able to kind of imagine a little bit, knowing what we know about their skill sets, which way they're leaning.
Yeah, so the candidates for the free safety spot are Matt Krasevich as a senior, did not take the step forward that I thought he would take as a junior. Like you and I thought, he's got some playmaking ability. Like you're talking about. There's, Miles, it's weird to say this after the Northwestern game, but like the 35 other games, what do you have? Like 5 interceptions, which was fine, but it wasn't Kirby Joseph, Kendall Smith level that we've seen in this defense. But he was just never made mistakes, like rarely made mistakes for Miles Scott. Matt Krasevich made mistakes. Like everyone saw the missed tackles, some missed assignments in coverage. You need better from a veteran. So big offseason for Matt Krasevich, who should have the upper hand here because of his experience. He's played a lot of defensive snaps for Illinois, but when the games happen, he's got to be better. So, but he's a great athlete, big, physical, like former baseball outfielder. Like he looks the part, Joey, and he's got some experience. Now he's just got to translate that to production. But Aaron Henry went out and was aggressive, getting Levon Williams out of East Texas A&M, like out of nowhere. East Texas A&M. I think it was Texas A&M Commerce before, but yeah, it's kind of a little bit of under-recruited guy, a little smaller than Matt Krasevich, but he's produced. He's a really good athlete, really fast, physical, and playmaker. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he pushes Matt Krasevich. Another guy I'm really intrigued by is Andre Lovett, who starred as a special teamers, as a true freshman. That usually leads to a rotational role as a sophomore. So whether he's the dime safety, Joey, or I think he's going to have a chance to play more defensive snaps, get more reps in this system this spring and moving forward. So that would be the competition for me, though, is Krasevich and the transfer of Levon Williams.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. We'll see. I don't know that there's a lot of other, like Zanai Scott is probably more of a boundary and a nickel than he is a free safety or an outside cornerback. So I think you nailed the kind of the guys that you're going to see in that battle, unless they, I don't think there's a wide receiver at this point you turn and convert over.
No, the other guy that people are really interested in, of course, is Jacob Eberhardt. But what a great situation for him to learn behind Matthew Bailey for a year and take over that role, right? Like that's the perfect situation.
Some have said that I will attach already to Matt 2.0, like I did Sid 2.0 when Matthew Bailey learned from Sidney Brown. But that's a pretty good, kind of history, I guess, of that safety position. And that is another position that I think you want to see more on-ball production, because when this defense is at its best, that position gets takeaways too. And it's not always just a free safety. That boundary safety has some of those impact as well. But yeah, we'll see. But I to your point with Jacob Eberhardt, with Nick Hankins, the biggest thing, and we've probably talked about this at other positions, maybe even wide receiver at times, you can let guys grow at their own speed. It's not, hey, Nick, listen, buddy. Hey, Tanner Heckle, listen, buddy. You've got to go out there, and this is going to be really hard for you right now, but you got to get through it. Hey, Xavier Scott. Xavier Scott had to go through some of that way back in 2022, and there's a tremendous value in letting guys grow at a pace that's good for them. And if that pace is in the 2 deep, if that pace is pushing for a starting spot, then great. But it didn't happen because of necessity. And I think that is a major deal. At a position that's really, especially outside corner, there's a lot of confidence driven in that. And you're going to get beat. You got to know how to handle that. You got to know how to quickly adjust, how to fix those things. So to just kind of let all of that happen a little bit more naturally while you watch guys like Xavier Scott, like Juice Clark, and those two are really close. By the way, I think that was something they were both looking forward to this year, was playing together. Yeah. That didn't happen, but they're incredibly close. And then, of course, Matthew Bailey, a shoe in, no doubt, team captain. I would put Xavier Scott in that conversation too.
Yeah, Xavier gets another year with his brother too, Zanai. So that's a plus of it as well. Everyone comes into the new year thinking, new year, new me. Well, here's a New Year's resolution for you. Don't stink. And that's where Mando comes in, guys. It's a whole body deodorant, safe to use anywhere on your body, from head to toe and everywhere in between. It was created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. It's clinically proven to block odor all day long and control odor for up to 72 hours. Mando's deodorant product options include the solid deodorant stick. That's what I go with. The formulated and powered by mandelic acid to stop odor before it starts. They also have the spray deodorant that is aluminum free and ideal for those hard to reach places. All of Mando's products are baking soda free and paraben free, and you can choose from a variety of fresh scents like bourbon leather, clover woods, Mount Fuji, or Pro Sport. Mando is clinically proven to control odor better than a shower with soap alone. Some men mask their BO with scents. Mando men get the job done right. Don't mask it, Mando it. Available in retailers near you, or head to shopmando.com because for a limited time, new customers get 20% off site-wide with our exclusive code. Use code Illini at shopmando.com for 20% off site-wide plus free shipping. That's shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Mando's got you covered with deodorant plus sweat control, say goodbye to sweat stains, and hello to long-lasting freshness. Guys, I know you're hitting the gym hard to start the new year, but you have to fuel those gains. And starting the year strong is easier and way more delicious with premium portion proteins from Omaha Steaks. Stay satisfied, get energy, fuel your routine with premium pre-packaged protein delivered right to your door from Omaha Steaks. And it's not just fuel, this is delicious experience, guys. From handcrafted USDA certified tender steaks to gourmet burgers, some of the juiciest you'll have, versatile chicken and pork and more. They have an unmatched variety of high quality proteins that everyone loves. And right now, you can taste the difference and get an extra $35 off at omahasteaks.com with promo code Illini at checkout. Omaha Steaks sent me a box, guys, and I tell you, the burgers are some of the most delicious you'll have. It's really, really tender steak, and they tell you how to prep it, how to cook it, so that you cook it the best way. So let Omaha Steaks deliver high-quality proteins right to your door. Visit omahasteaks.com, get an extra $35 off with promo code Illini at checkout. That's OMAHA steaks.com, promo code Illini. Terms apply. See site for details. All right, Joey, let's dive into it. I don't know if you heard this. Illinois needs some defensive linemen. They've lost many of them. Pat Farrell, the only returning rotational piece. They basically lost six of the last top seven of the top 8 defensive linemen, both the graduation and the transfer portal. Surprise, Eli Coonan makes the move out. He signs with Michigan State. Surprise, Angel McCollum leaves and he signs with Texas A&M. Not surprised by Jeremiah Warren, but Tommy Odurojaye was a big loss. I can't say I'm surprised when a guy transfers for the 5th time to a 5th different school, but he was a very good player here, and I thought that was a really good marriage. Leaves a massive amount of holes up front, Joey. So what's your take on the Illinois defensive line right now?
Yeah, it's concerning. They need to fill. They need to get a no-doubt starter. You need to rebuild your rotation. There's really a lot to unpack here, isn't there, with this defensive line? Because I think the 2 best players that you lost in the portal are the 2 biggest losses, let's put it like that, are Angelo McCollum and Tommy Odurojaye.
Is the 3rd Coonan?
In terms of the biggest losses, I mean, David Alano is really, really good. There's just a percentage of the game that lends itself to the kicker versus from a snap volume on the defensive line.
Yeah, so we'll just do positional players, right? Because David Alano is the best at what he does. And we can talk about Machowski here. I forgot to put that on the list. But I would say, Malachi Hood's a good player, started 7 games for Illinois. JoJo Hayden, he was a sign guy for me. Justin Bullock. These are good players, rotational pieces that are nice, but those 3 D linemen would top it for me.
Yeah, no doubt. There's a clear top 2 to me, and it's McCollum and Odurojaye. So not only do you lose the top 2 at their position, the top 2 guys are at the same position, then you lose the depth behind them. So it's just kind of, you're watching this all happen in real time, and it feels like an avalanche of defensive linemen are leaving on top of losing James Thompson to graduation. Kurt Neal, by the way, headed to Purdue, another defensive line loss. So it's just like you're losing him at such a rate, and they still haven't replaced him at such a rate to this point. So you kind of just move all of those things together. And then the third piece to this, Jeremy, is after the first two or three classes, I've liked the way the Illinois defensive line has been recruited. And all of a sudden you start to think, okay, you can jump off the transfer carousel with defensive linemen that's an expensive position. It's quarterback, it's edge, it's tackle. And I would imagine defensive linemen, maybe wide receiver in that next point of conversation. So you think, okay, Bret's been really good at retention. You've got good, talented players in here. Take a breath, let all this develop, and you can see the makings of a good defensive line. And now you've got to start that over. So it's a mixture of your best players are at that position. You've lost a lot at that position, and you're suddenly back on this transfer carousel. And I think they'll end up being okay. They'll get players, but it is an uneasy feeling for 2 weeks. And that's not just like us saying fans are uneasy. Like that is a huge position of need for Illinois, and you need to see them bring in talent and depth there. And there's still a lot to attack.
And they're expensive, and that's part of the reason you're losing them, right? I think Illinois kind of came into this thinking they would have Eli Kunin and Angelo McCollum back. And I don't know about Durajaye, but at a certain price. And then the market has exploded for defensive linemen, and Illinois was filling needs elsewhere. And, at some point, Illinois did decide, like, no, we're not going to pay that for these players. At some point they decide that, right? Like, and Illinois didn't want to pay that, but now they have to go replace it, which is a daunting task. Now we're sitting here on Friday afternoon. I'm sure Illinois will add one within the hour that we post this one. They're going to add, like they will add defensive linemen. So anyone's like, oh, time's running short. Listen, the portal closes today, Friday. You can still sign players after this. Like that's just the deadline to get in to the transfer portal outside of the teams who are in the national championship game. And I think grad transfers at some point can enter the portal too. So,
I'm a little confused about the grad transfers. The thing I do think the timeline built in is you want to get them here for winter and spring. So there is a class beginning,
Tuesday, right?
And I think there might be a little bit of wiggle room add drop dates. I mean, it's been a little bit since you and I are in college, but I think that still blends in. You'll probably find a way.
What do you think they're doing this weekend? They're hosting defensive linemen. Now, they do not share every defensive lineman that they're hosting right now because time is of the essence. And they don't want every other team to know it because we know it or fans know it. So the transfers kept under wraps a little bit more, but they're hosting defensive linemen right now. But yeah, they got to add at least one more no doubt starter. And they got to add several rotation pieces here, Joey, like multiple rotation pieces. So not shock me if they add up to 4 defensive linemen here. And I think one has to be a big time investment where it's a difference maker. I think Carter Janke is one of those guys from Penn, a 2-time all Ivy League guy that plays like James Thompson Jr. But now you got to go add another difference maker, get some penetration and be strong against the run. And you got to rebuild the nose tackle position, man. Like I think Carter Janke, give me a starter from a Power 4 school and Pat Farrell. That's a pretty good start. Like I think that's a decent 4-eye technique, and you develop some guys you got coming up, whether that's Cameron Brooks or whoever. And I think you have a decent group there. You got to rebuild the nose tackle position though. Like, is Isaiah White the top nose tackle currently on the roster? And he played like 5 snaps this year.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going to say. You have to add a no doubt starter. You have to add a nose doubt starter, right? You need a nose tackle. Like that is the biggest position. Now, other side of this,
by the way, Demetrius John was the name I was searching for. He's probably going to be in the rotation.
And this freshman coming in, this is once again your public service reminder to don't expect freshmen on the offensive or defensive line to play big roles. It doesn't typically go well. But yeah, it's nose. And if you want a glass half full, and I know maybe a lot of people at this moment in time are interested in seeing a half full glass. This has been a position where it's like they added who now? Who is Denzel Jackson? And you develop him into a really good player. You develop T-Rod Edwards into a really good player. You have the Kurt Neal, General Hunt, Angelo McCollum trio. Really ended up being more Angelo McCollum than not later in the season. Terrence Jamison is good with that position. So if you want to feel good about something, I think they've developed that position on the defensive line pretty well relative to what your expectations were when they got there. You got to go get that guy, though.
You know what I'd like? I'd like to get bigger at that position. I'd like more Denzel Jackson type. Like, I thought he was really, really good. And that was a find, right? Like, so that's why if Illinois adds somebody that had like 150 to 200 snaps at a MAC school, I give Jamison the benefit of the doubt because Denzel Jackson kind of came out of nowhere and was really good. And you mentioned Angelo McCollum getting a lot of the reps. No nose tackle played more than 300 reps, I think, this year. Like, they played 3 guys there, all of them a little undersized. Kurt Neal was a part of that. Geno Hunt played 200 plus snaps. So they really rotate a lot of guys, but I would like to get bigger there to get better against the run and, guys who can push the pocket, athletic enough to do that. The 2 that are really interesting names there, Armand Parker and Javon Parker, played at Washington, part of the rotation, long injury histories though, extensive injury histories for both of those. But you had both those guys, or at least one of them, and that's a guy who's played at this level. And then you add another guy for depth that help you out. Injury questions there, but those would be proven players. The guy who intrigues me the most is Keona Davis, that type from Nebraska. Now, schools like Miami and Florida State are interested, but Illinois can make a significant investment into somebody. So he's a guy that would really interest me as a 6'5", 280, can add some more strength, started 12 games for Nebraska. If you can add a guy like that and a couple nose tackles, Joey, I'd feel a lot better come Tuesday.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the thing that you and I have talked about a little bit, again, you haven't asked me on the podcast in a month, so we haven't really had a chance to say that on here, is what do they want out of their defensive line? And that is, I still have a really big question about what is the most important thing for a defensive line, because we think, and I get it, you look at PFF and pressure numbers are right there. It's like, yes, get the quarterback, go, get the quarterback. And there's a huge value to that. But when you hear, if you go back and listen to Terrence Jamison talk, when you talk about the defensive line, it is always, and it's one of Bret Bielema's things, stop the run, stop the run, stop the run. So it's your emphasis, hey, get guys that maybe don't have a great deal of pass rush value, maybe try to coach some of that into them, but you get run stoppers. The run defense took a step forward this year relative to where it was in 2024. So is that what they want? I don't know. I really can't wait to talk to Bret Bielema, to talk to Terrence Jamison about that. Ideally, you get both, right? That is like the ideal world. But now when you're starting to piece this together, what is their area of importance in terms of what they're looking for on that line?
Yeah, and the other thing we have to think about is Illinois' base is a 3-man front, right, with the 2 outside linebackers on top of the 3 defensive linemen. Does that change? I don't know. Did they make any adjustments to go more of a 4-man front this year? Like, it would be interesting to see what they decide to add. I would imagine they stay similar because it's worked for them over the grand scheme of things, but maybe they change things up. So I'm interested to see what pieces they make, just to see if there's any clues of, all right, they just kind of adding the same kind of pieces, or are they changing some things, and whether that's bigger nose tackles, more athletic kind of 3 techniques who can get some penetration. It'll be interesting to watch that moving forward. New year, big goals, no time to cook? Well, Factor makes it easy with fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs, so you can eat well without the shopping or cooking. With Factor, you get quality functional ingredients, including lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole food ingredients, and healthy fats. There are no refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners, no refined seed oils. Meals that fit your goal and schedule, healthier eating, calorie management, and more protein. You can choose from over 100 rotating weekly meals, including high protein, calorie smart, Mediterranean diet, GLP-1 support, and ready to eat salads. Plus, they have new Muscle Pro collection that supports strength and recovery. Also with Factor, it's always fresh, never frozen, ready in about 2 minutes, no prep, no stress. So head to factormeals.com/Illini50off and use code Illini50off to get 50% off your first Factor box plus free breakfast for 1 year. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Make healthier eating easy with Factor. So head to factormeals.com/Illini50off and use code Illini50off to get 50% off your first Factor box plus free breakfast for 1 year. I still think, how do you feel about edge and linebacker?
That's a good question.
Too. Like, we're focused on the defensive line, but I came into the offseason thinking edge was the biggest need. And they've added William Holmes, who's a really interesting addition, former baseball player, 24 years old. Had a really productive year last season at Utah State, just his second year of playing organized football. But otherwise, it's Joe Barna, Daniel Brown, Mason Moragan. I think they'll add one more piece here, Joey, but I thought they'd add a more proven piece up here. So at the edge, like a little unsettled here too, because you're counting on significant improvement from Joe Barna, which I think will happen, or significant production increase. He's been productive when he plays. Daniel Brown to stay healthy and be as productive as he is over many more snaps. And a guy like William Holmes needs to hit, and a guy like Mason Moragan might need to contribute.
Yeah, that is, kind of reminds me a little bit of when they lost Johnny Newton. It's like, hey, by the way, not going to have the same number of, just straight up production numbers. You go from Johnny Newton to the next player. Gabe Akis is going to fall into that category. But if we're sitting here saying, what do they want on the defensive line? Do they want to get after the quarterback? You do want to get after the quarterback at edge. That is where the money is getting after the quarterback. Do you have enough there right now? Even if it's not Gabe Akis levels of production, which is just going to be a real bear to replicate because he's so freaking good. He's going to be probably a day 2 draft pick. So I don't think you can go in expecting that replication, but you need Joe Barna to he's a sign guy, right? He has been, we've seen this for him out of a couple of years. You need him to now, hey, this is your show. Go, right? Go be productive in this. Daniel Brown, there's been moments where you're like, whoa, quick twitch, get to the quarterback. He's got some power built in with that twitch. So, but now that can't be flashes anymore. Can't be ideas. Now you need those guys to step in to that. And then what's behind them? They rotate that position. It's a position you got to be 100% to go get the quarterback. Is Mason Moragan ready to take that leap? Ish Conte was a guy who had kind of flirted between inside backer and outside backer. You look at inside backer, we'll get to that in a minute. I don't know that you've got the versatility to move him at this point there.
Well, my thing was, like, you brought up Ish Conte. You know who's an intriguing edge rusher is Grant Bierman. But you need Grant Bierman at linebacker. Like, you can't move.
He legitimately maybe you're starting middle linebacker right now, right?
Yeah, you probably can't move Grant Bierman now. Linebacker's another question mark, right? Like, you've lost Malachi Hood and JoJo Hayden, who I felt better about as rotation players than starters. James Cruz returns. I felt better about rotation with him. He does have a lot of experience. You've added Robert Edmondson from Colorado State, who's solid. You're counting on Grant Bierman, I think, or Ish Conte to take a big step forward there. But I would say this about pass rush. When we're thinking about this defensive front, when you have the secondary you think you have, Aaron Henry should be able to get more aggressive, right? Like, I would hope so. I would hope he trusts these guys a little bit more than he trusted this past season, which I understand why he did.
If you pause for a second, you can see the comments filling up with 3-man rush right now. In fact,
I'll do it. 3-man
rush. Yeah, I think that holds, to be fair. So if you look at, let's just break down the 2 linebacker positions real quickly, Jeremy. Middle linebacker feels like Grant Bierman and James Cruz. We'll see which of those 2 comes out to be the starter. Then you got Conte and Edmondson at your weak side because, Kaneno DeLuga played a lot of snaps. We have to throw Dylan Rosiak in the loss, his graduation loss, but it's a big deal. He's a good football player.
A guy we shouldn't overlook. Jack Paris made some noise. He made some noise. I know. And I know Cam Thomas is coming in at one point, was a 4-star prospect. I think Jack Paris would be that kind of wild card guy for me going to next year because the staff was raving about him.
Which of the linebacker positions are you imagining him at?
I think he's going to be like what James Cruz was as a redshirt freshman, right? Like kind of that rotational middle linebacker. Mike. I think he's a Mike. I
think so too. But I also think Grant Bierman is.
I just need Grant Bierman on the field.
That's fine. That's fine.
I think you can get really creative with him. That's why I don't want to overlook that guy could be on the edge at times. Like, it would not surprise me. Because remember how they kind of played CJ Hart?
That's exactly who I thought of.
It's kind of that overhang linebacker. Grant has some natural pass rush skills. He's 6'5", 235, really athletic. Like, he might be one of your better pass rushers on this team. So I kind of know we're all kind of plugging him in as a middle linebacker. I just count him in as kind of the second level, flexible piece. I'm not saying this name, but like the way Penn State kind of used Abdul Carter, the way Penn State kind of used Micah Parsons, I can see Illinois getting creative with Grant Bierman and just using his athleticism, length in multiple versatile ways.
Yeah, I like that. I can see that. Again, use them as an idea, not as a, you're not making those
This guy doesn't have hardly any defensive snaps, right? So he's your defense potentially.
And to that point, the thing that I felt good about in the secondary is letting guys come along naturally. You're maybe not afforded that right now at linebacker, unless they're in the building saying, hey, no one else knows how good Grant Bierman got from the Northwestern game or throughout the course of the season. Like, we're ready to unleash this guy next year. We don't see that. We don't know that at this moment. But like Jack Paris is a guy who you brought him up because I do think he's interesting. But it's like, okay, you kind of, there's like more of a reliance on those two younger guys as this roster is built right now. And it's just different than what we just talked about with the secondary.
All right, you got any other thoughts on defense you want to get out?
No, I
got to add some pieces. I think there's about a handful of roster spots, 5-6 roster spots left. I imagine they're all tight end, maybe one. Maybe they add one tight end, but I think they're almost entirely focused on this defensive front, D-line, and maybe one edge.
Can I ask you a question that you might tell me to shut up?
Yeah.
If I would have told you on our way back, okay, great. That's great. If I would have told you on our way back from Madison that on January 16th there would be one coaching staff change, and that change would be on the offensive side of the ball, Thad Ward going to Kansas State, I don't know that I would have believed it to even ask you that or to tell you that. And I'm sure you maybe wouldn't have believed it. And again, we can't say anything with 100% certainty, but it's January 16th. And there's not been any movement in terms of the coaching staff outside of Thad Ward.
Now there's more time with the NFL cycle happening. So usually there's one or two in February. So I still think there's a possibility of more happening, but yeah, it's a little fewer than I expected. But I think they're trying to get through this portal window, and then Bret Bielema will probably focus a little bit more on that and see where they go. So I'm not counting out still that changes could happen.
Sure.
I would think though, and maybe this is completely wrong, and in a week it's different. I don't think you drag a coordinator search this long. I don't think.
No, because I think of who you could have missed out on by dragging it into this long, unless it's just someone in the pocket. But I still, just in the way that we've talked to some of these transfer guys, and
Aaron's been very
sense. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and people, the one name you'd think of is Jim Leonard, right? But I think Jim's going to be an NFL defensive coordinator soon, and I don't think he'd have a lot of interest in coming back to college.
Maybe within the next 2 weeks soon, right? He's going to have his opportunities.
Yeah.
That I think it's interesting, and Charlie Bolin in a similar plane. Usually, when you go to the NFL, you don't really come back.
Nathan,
there are a couple exceptions to that rule, and you can go back and find them. But more times than not, you go to that, you live the NFL life, the NFL schedule, and you're not really turning to start boarding flights to this airport and that airport to go chase this recruit or that recruit or this call or that call.
And guys who do come back usually need to come back because they don't have an NFL job. Chip Kelly. And when they do well again, they go right back, Joey, to the NFL because you actually have a life when you're an NFL assistant. I mean, college coaches really, really do not. So yeah, it's fair bringing up. I think just a history, there would be another change, but the biggest thing is Barry Lundy Jr. is back, right? And I do think with this running back coach, I don't know who it'll be. I think Barry should have a lot of say. I think he's earned that, right?
Yeah, and I believe pretty comfortably he had quite a lot of say in the wide receivers coach when they hired Justin Stepp, and that turned out pretty well.
Yeah. All right, Joe, I didn't get your thoughts. I've given my thoughts on the offensive edition, so give me your thoughts. Caton Hauser, quarterback at Illinois, coming from ECU. What'd you think?
Yeah, I like it. I think he fits what they do. And I'm glad Bret Bielema said, here's the thing. I know you and you talked about Caton Hauser with others. You guys have covered the X's and O's. There are people smarter than me to do that. I think he fits. I think he's not as mobile as Luke Altmaier. He can make the throws. you can work some mobility in there. But I'm glad Bret Bielema said kind of what we had wondered about a little bit in terms of how do you add to this quarterback room while understanding that you need a really talented player, but you got some guys in there that you really believe in, and you want to make sure they have their opportunity when that opportunity arises. Carson Boyd, Michael Clayton, eventually Camden Lapati. So he said, there are only a few quarterbacks. I think he said that they were after, and Hauser was one of them. He was a unanimous yes, but I was glad to hear that because it's kind of the idea that we've kicked around a little bit, and that gives you a chance to get another full read on Carson Boyd. You get a whole season. He's going to be your backup quarterback, barring some John Paddock situation, which I don't think makes sense with the way that this roster is right now today. Okay, now you know what's this going to look like. How do you feel about him going into 27? How do you feel about Michael Clayton going into 27? How do you feel about Camden Lapati going into 2027? And you just don't ruffle any feathers behind them. And usually you don't worry. I still don't worry too much about ruffling feathers, getting the best quarterback, but I do like the talent they have in there. So if you could ruffle that at least a little less, I think that's a good thing. And Illinois did that.
Quarterback transfer grade, I would give like A-. I just think they're bigger names. I love this fit. I think it's a really good fit. He really stretches the field. I think his deep ball can even be better than Luke's. I do like that you got an option that can quarterback sneak it, like that can do one of those. And he gets rid of the ball.
Who can do it now too.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. And I think he gets rid of the ball really quickly, but it's not as dynamic of a runner as Luke. And we just knew who Luke was. Like Luke had established himself in the locker room, what he was, and had unbelievable confidence. So I do like that Caton, though, has been through the Big Ten. Like he's had that kind of experience. So do you disagree with that? Like A-, B+ at the worst?
Yeah, that's fine. And here's the thing. I think we grade that on the curve of we knew where Illinois was. Well, we also knew the market Illinois was going to be in. I give that an A- knowing what market they were in. They weren't in the Dylan Raiola market. They weren't in the
I would have had Hauser higher on my list anyway than Dylan Raiola or Aiden.
Sure, but I mean, you understand the point. Like the market that they were in was not that top 4 quarterback market nationwide. So if you go to where Illinois was shopping, they got a pretty good quarterback at the really, I would say at the kind of the top end, definitely at the top end of the market that they were in. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, the wide receiver additions. Alex Perry, big, 6'5", 210 pounds, coming from Florida International, where he was first team All-Conference USA. Jay-Sean Platt, speed, Joey, 6 foot with a lot of speed. Then Ty Robinson, Ball State, very injured, but he's also very big, 6'4", 200 pounds. What do you think of that wide receiver kind of overhaul along with Hudson Clement and Colin Dixon coming back?
Yeah, Perry's a headliner. That much is clear. It's Justin Bowick frame, but he's also far more productive at FIU than Justin Bowick was when he came down. Like Bowick, by the way, now at Oklahoma State, he signed there. But yeah, I think Perry's a guy who you could see him coming in, and it's not a far off world to see him starting opposite Hudson Clement, which means Colin Dixon goes to the slot. And that's really what I want to bring up here. Colin Dixon's versatility allowed you so much kind of space in the transfer portal. You didn't have to pigeonhole yourself in, got to get a slot, got to get a slot, got to get a slot.
Tony Diaz, who went to Iowa, right? Like,
yeah, and Platt can play the slot. That would be where he fits with that speed. I think he's also a specialist or a kick return specialist, punt return specialist. So, that might be where you see the most out of him. But you were able to say, okay, if we get this, and Dixon can go here. If we get this, Dixon can go here. And you ended up with Alex Perry, who I think is a pretty good wide receiver. He gives you that size in the room. Hudson Clement, Colin Dixon aren't going to be mistaken for the tallest guys in the world. So you have a little bit of a different flavor in there. And, if you want to keep Colin Dixon out.
With his big arm and deep ball, like Alex Perry's a basketball player out there. He's a really good basketball player in high school. And I think all those abilities, the length, the athleticism, he's got some power to him. Ty Robinson's just been injured the entire time. There's another Mike New special, kind of like Christian Abney and Justin Bowick last year. So I like that you had a guy inside the program said, hey, this guy's good. Just he hasn't stayed healthy. Gives you more of that size, he's bigger, more physical than Alex Kapka Jones, who I kind of, in my head, he's kind of replacing him in that rotation. But Jaysean Platt's really interesting because that's just speed. And that's one thing this wide receiver room did just not have a true burner. Like Hank Beatty made some big plays early in the season, but just a guy who can take the top off a defense. And I think with a guy like Hauser who throws the deep ball as well as he does, I think it's a great fit because you know what Clement and Dixon can do underneath and in those intermediate routes. But to have a guy who can truly get over the top, stretch the field a little bit, I think they had good fits around Dixon and Clement, who are proven productive, Joey. They were as productive as Hank Beatty in the final 7 games of the season. So I think they surrounded Caden Hauser with the talent necessary to win. And we haven't even talked about Nas Rankin could play in the slot right away. Braden Trimble could play in the rotation this year. That wide receiver room is really good. I give them another A- for the wide receiver room.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Braden Trimble. I'm currently gassing up the Trimble hype train. It should be full around March, and we can get this thing on the road and see it here. But I think just the way that you added
sign guy Braden Trimble early.
He may have been one last year for me. We're all aboard on this, but I still think just the way that they built this room, you can see still a path for meaningful snaps for him in 2026. And I like that. I think he could play in the slot. He could play outside. Dixon can move around and give you that ability and that versatility. I just think that now you pair him with some of the transfer additions. We'll see what Nas Rankin ends up being, but you've got what looks to be a good amount of options there. And I do think we haven't talked about this yet. I don't think on here. It's my last point about Braden Trimble, because it's like the buzz was so loud in spring and it was loud in fall camp, and then he redshirted and you didn't see him, and it's like, oh, well, shoot. I thought there was a lot there with him. Hank Beatty doing Hank Beatty things, Dixon, Clement. But I also, if you listen to Bret Bielema, and he hasn't said this outright, but just in listening to his pressers when he talked about Hank Beatty, there was a time in Hank Beatty's freshman year that Bret Bielema thought he needed to play Hank Beatty. He didn't sound like he was the happiest 4 years later that Hank Beatty played that much. It sounded a little bit like, so I don't want to put words in his mouth, but the way that he brought it up, you just think, if you had a do-over, would you do that over? And then my second thought is maybe Braden Trimble's that do-over, right? And you don't burn it his freshman year. I am probably grasping a little bit there, and I don't want to put words in Bret's mouth, but the more he talked about Hank's freshman year, the more I thought, maybe that's why we're not seeing Braden Trimble.
Yeah. Hot dog, right? Nickname Luke Altmaier bestowed upon him.
Yeah, we got to make sure Caden Hauser is good on the nickname thing. We got to make sure he's just formulating a couple ideas to present to us.
O-line additions, Joey. Jake Redford, Wisconsin center, and Christian Martin, left tackle from Colorado State. This is a huge overhaul. You get Brandon Henderson back. You get some backups, Brandon Hansen, TJ McMillan back, the Knappich brothers. But you've added the JUCOs as well, TJ Taylor, Alfred Washington, and Micah Matalau. We always knew a huge overhaul was coming. What do you think now that it's all settled?
Yeah, I like the depth, the idea of the depth, right? And we got to be careful. I just want to remind us now in January to be careful in August, because it's always everyone has depth everywhere in August for the most part. So let's just remember to be careful on that. But Henderson, I would plug him in at right guard. I liked what we saw to Nathan Knappich in the bowl game. I also like that they didn't just say, yep, all right, that's a no doubt left tackle. We're good here. Focus elsewhere. You want to still bring in competition. You want to still foster competition at that position in particular.
And play the right side too, by the way.
That's right. Yeah. So he's got that. Yeah, he's got versatility, which is great. Christian Martin comes in. PFF isn't particularly sexy for Christian Martin. If you're a PFF guy, you're going to look at that and say, or a PFF viewer, you're going to look at that and say, ugh. Really? Illinois clearly likes what they see in terms of what he can do. Illinois wasn't alone in liking what they saw. Christian had a lot of different opportunities out of the transfer portal. You just brought in, there's so much competition everywhere, and you got bigger at center. That's probably the too long didn't read version. Competition all over, bigger center, Henderson starts, figure the rest out.
Yeah. I'm so like, there's 3 competitions, right? Left tackle could be Christian Martin, probably be my front runner. And then the Knappich brothers, which one? I don't know, whether it's Aiden or Nathan. I would think Nathan is the leader in the clubhouse at the right side. But TJ Taylor can play there as well. Taylor can play guard. Micah Matalau can play guard. Brandon Hansen, like this is a big opportunity for him. I think Renfro and Brandon Henderson are the no doubt starters. And then from there, it'll be a lot of fun to figure that out. But you hope there's competition, but you also hope that some there's talent here, Joey, but you got to have some consistency emerge. And that'll be interesting on the offensive line because everything else in this offense, I mean, tight end, I think there's some good blockers. We'll see what they can do in the passing game. But I like the skill positions here. The offensive line, I like the talent depth they've added, but a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, you know the commercial, like, where are we going? I don't know. When will we get there? Do you know that commercial?
I think
that's
so.
The offense. I think my pitch was off a little bit. If I had a better pitch, I think you would have gotten it. That's the offensive line for me right now.
You don't get any of my movie references. I don't get any of your commercial references.
You think I drop a lot of commercial references? I mean, I know the emu, and I know the song. I'll send you a link to the song. Someone listening.
You have watched every show known to man. Like, Joey has watched it, most likely.
Yeah.
You've asked me.
I'm
like, no, I can't. No.
I can't sit down for an hour, 2-hour movie. I just get like restless. But you let me sit and binge watch shows. Just even like, I'm so stupid that like the little time between shows.
Severance.
Yeah, but I have a few, like I have 15 seconds between episodes. I just recharge. I'm such a simple person. At any rate, that commercial.
There's a pause button.
Yeah, and then I just, it just doesn't work for me. So at any rate, that commercial is the offensive line. I like the cars they have to get there. Where are they going with it? I don't know what it's going to look like. When is it going to be clear? Don't know.
Yeah.
But I think I like where the end result can be because of who they have in that room.
They're athletic and they're bigger. They're bigger. Like that's something I'm a fan of. All right, as we wrap this up, Joey, just want to zoom out. Like, what do we think of Bielema and how Illinois has kind of approached this roster overhaul? Because they had so much to replace. Defensive line, obviously, is a huge concern here. You've had some guys actually leave this year, but Bielema has kept a lot of talent, added a lot of talent, some under the radar guys, some proven power forward guys. Just, is there anything that you find interesting about the grand scheme through 30,000 foot view here?
That's a good question. I like the retention of the stars. And I think that is, if you can do that every year, I think what you're seeing is let our stars come back and we believe we can develop everything else. And we can keep finding the next stars, develop the next rotation guy. That is the read that I have, because I'm sure if Illinois really wanted to, they could have matched some of the money for the departing guys. And they, from my view of it, and I could be entirely wrong, like, well, that doesn't fit into the way we have this structured from a quote unquote salary cap standpoint. But we'll go find this guy and make him, into this. That's just my read of it. I don't know if that's exactly how it went down, but my thing is he knows he can keep his good players, get them to the NFL, and then just build everything else around them from an evaluation standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, get the right guys in there and put it all together. That's all got to happen in 2026, right? Like, we haven't seen that truly get tested to this point because retention had been so good. But the transfer portal reaper comes for everybody at some point.
Yeah.
Right? You don't avoid what it is.
Yeah, and they were hit harder by that to their two deep, certainly, and a couple starters here than they had in previous years. But I also found it interesting that Bret, who's, family guy, right? FAMILLY guy, late in the fall, he's sitting there going, I got to see who's going to play. I got to see who can play for us. Otherwise, we got to cut him loose. And this guy was like, hey, if they're making $300,000 this year and I offer him $0, they kind of have an idea of what I'm thinking of. Like, I think he's becoming a little bit more, I don't want to say cutthroat, but like, this is business. This is a business. If you can't produce for me, we're not going to be spending money on you. So he let a lot of guys walk out the door, didn't pay up for some of those guys who are talking about leaving because he didn't maybe think they were quite worth that. I mean, that's at some point you have to think they're not worth that to let them walk out the door. And then he's going into the portal, Joey, and it feels like there's a lot of production over potential here, right? Like, this is the Indiana version. Now, Indiana's going out and getting real like proven stars now that they're one of the top programs in the country. But these guys might be from FAU and FIU and Utah State and places like that, or Colorado State. But he wants guys who are proven, East Texas A&M. They've shown they can play football, that they're ball players at the Division I level more than, hey, this guy was a former 4-star.
Yeah, and to build on that, before I jumped on here with you, I was reading our guy Brandon Marcello's really good piece about how Indiana came to be. And Indiana, as we know, has just changed the scope of reality for so many fan bases. And I get it, because what they're doing is absolutely absurd, what's happening in Bloomington and the way that they're having that success. But from some of the production, get older, guys who have produced, I was reading that from Brandon, and I thought, a little bit of what's happening in Champaign. They are going for that production. There are positions, and there have been players. Luke Altmaier, obviously, you had at that position to go get talent and potential in that moment in time. But you look at some of the other, for the most part, and hopefully, I'm trying to think if I'm missing. Do you remember guys that they brought in who have just been straight up, man, he was a former X-star, high 3-star, low 4-star guy.
I hate signaling a guy out, but Anichi Sledge, right? It's like one of those guys who's like a power 4 guy, but barely played. They've gone more towards guys who have proven they can play. Like James Thompson, Hudson Clement were, big expenditures and proven starters. So you want to add some of those guys. But
they've not gone from like, oh, he played 4 snaps at X school last year. That's not been their approach. They've been very much produced, and they've paid up for some of those power 4 producers, the 2 you mentioned. Otherwise, they found their Torrey Coxes, your Denzel Daxons, your Melvin Priestleys, your J.C. Davises. Now, those have also come with competition. It's not like they're the only team who finds these guys, but it's clear to me that they want guys who have done stuff in college football before arriving at Illinois. My final point of that is, it used to be, and it's changed a little bit, but you'd watch, you get into day 3, day 2 of the draft back then, and it's, that 6th and 7th round was like, that's cool. Where's that at? What is insert East Texas A&M? Yeah. Now, instead of, there's just a stopgap between the smaller schools and the back end of the 6th, 7th round. Now you got a power 4 stop in between there. And Illinois is clearly willing to be that power 4 stop if you've been productive at your other stops. I'm not trying to say all these guys they got from lower levels are bound for the NFL, but they are interested in, hey, you think you can prove it? We listen to you. We like what you hear. We think you can prove it. Come do it here, and then we'll get you where you want to go if things go right. That's at least my read of it.
We buried the lead, man. The Chow is back. Ethan Machowski coming back to replace David Olano, a guy he pushed real hard for the starting job in 2024, and Olano barely beat him out because he was more accurate inside 50 yards, but Machowski became their long field goal kicker, made a 59-yarder to set the school record. Spends last year at Washington. He was the kickoff guy. I imagine Joey's the kickoff guy for Illinois, but they bring in a guy who they're very, very familiar with, a guy with some Big Ten experience, not a lot kicking field goals. But what did you make of them bringing Machowski back along with Lucas Oseda, who returns after transfer from North Carolina last year?
Yeah, it made sense. They're familiar with him. There was a couple kickoff out of bounds late in that 2024 season. It's like, oh, that's weird. We haven't seen that. But his hang time on kickoffs is good, which allows your coverage unit to get down there. David Olano had a lot of touchbacks. I mean, it's not like he was some ineffective kickoff guy. He's going to A&M, and he's going to have a good role there. He's going to be a starting kicker and probably compensated pretty well for it. But you bring in Machowski, who's got a massive leg. You know what he is on kickoff. And then it's, hey, if Lucas Oseda, I don't want to forget about him in this race because I do think he is accurate, and I do think he showed that, especially later in the year. And maybe he wins that field goal thing, but you got a competition now. I don't think you have a competition at kickoff. And I would still put Ethan Machowski in my brain as a front runner on field goals, but you just keep pushing that and see what happens. But I think familiarity mattered. Having kicked at Memorial Stadium before, that is helpful. I'm not trying to act like it's always a snow globe, but it can be a struggle in there. You got to know how it works. So just that one made so much sense. The only thing that didn't make sense, he's from Washington. Like, that was a homecoming for him. But I think at Illinois, obviously, he probably would have seen the opportunity for a field goal job, right? Yeah. To go with his kickoff job and go to the next level.
Yeah. And I think, one of the enticing things about him coming back would probably be the chance to win that field goal job. So I would imagine Illinois didn't guarantee it to him, but said, hey, you have a chance here to win the field goal job back. So I think it was a smart addition. So you know what you got with Ethan Machowski. All right, it's going to be a big weekend for 2027 recruiting as well as their transfer stuff. We got all of that at Illini Inquirer. I wrote a story about Josh Whitman talking about how big of an offseason this is for the program to sustain success. You can all check that out at IlliniInquirer.com. But we're more than an hour into this thing, so we'll cut it off. But Joe, it's good to have you back on the podcast, buddy. Sorry it took so long.
Oh, it's all right. I was traveling all over. It was a good time. I had some Philly cheesesteaks. That's for another pod. And let's hope that the NCAA tournament that Illinois is in Philadelphia, because I know the place a little bit now. I'm a little familiar with it. I walked. I text you. I was like, hey, saved you an Uber, and my legs are falling off because I walked around Philly. But it's fun. It's fun. It's a really good time.
Good for you. All right. For Joey Wagner, I'm Jeremy Werner. Everybody, a great day. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time on the Illini Inquirer Podcast.